going from working for yourself to then working in one of the biggest organizations was like a whiplash. It was like going from, if I want to do a thing, I can just go out and do it. If I want to buy a piece of equipment, I can go out and do it. If I want to go on holiday, I just do it. And now I'm going to, if I want to buy a piece of equipment, I have to now pitch it to my bosses to then give them a use case to why we need a bicolor light or a new set of lenses or a external recorder. So that was a interesting experience.
Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. And today on the show, I'm joined by a man who needs absolutely no introduction. But for people who may be meeting you for the first time, who are you and what are you doing here?
My name's Ben, and I'm a Melbourne-based director of photography. Been working in the industry for around 15 years at this point, and I'm here just to talk about some of the experiences that I've had throughout the entirety of my career up until this point.
Awesome. All right. So Ben, tell me, how did you get into video production?
It's a bit of a long story. Look, I've been with cameras or around cameras for as long as I can remember. I think there's like photos of me as a child standing next to my dad's tripod and things like that. And then I borrowed permanently his mini DV camera for those of us who grew up in the era of mini DV, and then basically filmed skateboarding videos. So skateboarding videos were really my way into video production. I made so many videos with this cheap mini DV camera, and then going through all of the things like finding out what Firewire was so I could get the like analog tape onto digital and doing all of that song and dance just to get the footage. So that's kind of where I began. So after basically filming all of these skateboarding videos with my friends and stuff like that, I started to hop onto forums just to learn a little bit more about cameras. Skate Perception was a really big upbringing, as well as DVXUser for those who grew up in for those who grew up with Panasonics, because the DVX was I think one of the first cameras that gave you true progressive 25p or 24p, depending on which like region of the world you were from.
It was a big deal at the time.
Yep, and shot 4:3, so you could do anamorphic. So anamorphic was a big thing. Not that I got into anamorphic. I didn't know what I was doing, to be fair, back then. I picked up a DVX 100A. It was like on eBay, one of those things like walking to the post office with the most money I've ever had in my wallet, saving up like work dollars for 3 months and like going down to the post office, picking up this case and being like, oh my God, I've got like this new camera, but I have no idea how to use it. So I spent a lot of time on DVXUser learning the, ins and outs of, the exposure triangle and things like that. Then fell down the rabbit hole of 35mm adapters, and that was its own thing. Wild, like honking, massive lens attachments to the front of your camera that was already relatively heavy, and having to use the 35mm adapter rails. So I think my camera weighed about 15 kilos by the end of it, and you lost like 3 stops of exposure, so you couldn't actually do anything without a lot of light.
Which brand did you end up going with?
I ended up with the Red Rock Micro.
Yeah, I've got one right over there.
Yeah. Is that the M2?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the M2 and it was a kind of a hodgepodge of components. Like this was like the early days of Pro-Aim. So I had a Pro-Aim kind of rail system for it that was like really heavy, and like figuring out how to use it was a bit weird. And then I had like the beam splitter glass, so you didn't have to flip the image in post, because that was a thing also. Like if you filmed with the straight 35mm adapter, it flipped the image. So you had to like rotate it in post. So I had like the device to flip that thing around. So yeah, that was that. And then I also kind of grew up, like not long after that was the DSLR revolution. The photographer, now director, Vincent Laforet, dropped this short film called, I think, Reverie. I need to be fact checked on that. It's been a long time since that came out, but it was the first kind of proof of concept for the 5D Mark II to shoot truly cinematic video. And that kind of blew up. And next thing you know, everyone's shooting on their 5D Mark II.
Yeah, they shot an episode of House, I think, with it.
Yep. At that point, it didn't do true 24p. It only did like 29.97. which is the NTSC frame rate, which is always fun.
Yeah, when you live in PAL land like us.
Yeah. It doesn't really work for us too much. But then shortly after that was a 7D. So the 7D was my first kind of like step into the DSLR, HDSLR revolution at the time. So I grew up with like watching people like Philip Bloom.
Oh, he's still around.
Yeah. He doesn't post as much anymore. Dan Lenny from F-Stop Academy. And yeah, that was kind of my formative filmmaking upbringing. So yeah,
But you went to film school as well.
I did go to film school. I'm a Deakin alumni, and
Same as me.
Yeah. So I started off as an IT graduate. So my background was information technology, multimedia technology. So web design was basically my first kind of education, and I was like, this is not what I want to be doing. My real passion was to be around video and stuff like that. And I thought I might be able to do a little bit of that through the IT path, but there wasn't really. I was like, look, short-sighted. I should have known that it would be more coding centric. So I finished my degree and I spoke to my parents, who were very much like, get a degree that you can fall back on, because arts is kind of hard to make a living in. And, that
Very wise.
That was like, makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I finished my IT degree and then went back to Deakin to do a master's of film and video with a master's of creative enterprise or creative arts. Majoring in like creative enterprise, basically.
Okay, how long was that?
1.5 years, but okay. I kind of stretched it out to, I think, 2 years, because some of I wanted to do the cinematography course, but when I first enrolled, it was full. And then, so I kind of delayed that until kind of the second year.
So when was that? Was that, you went to university, was that after all your DSLR, or after the DSLR revolution, or? It
was happening concurrently.
Yeah, okay.
It was kind of maybe halfway through the DSLR revolution. I was a little bit late to the game because I was like, I bought this DVX100. I don't want to like get a new camera and then that camera doesn't get used and, becomes a paperweight. And that's eventually what ended up happening. But yeah, so it was about halfway through that kind of process when I started my film degree, and I actually used my DSLRs during my course because I didn't want to rent out the P2 cameras from the equipment rental place, because it was a big camera and like I wanted to shoot stuff on the weekends, basically.
Yeah, okay. And once you finished your uni degree, or your master's, sorry.
Yeah.
Where to from there?
Wow, okay.
Find a job. How'd you do it?
I think my job, like finding work, was probably not the most straightforward. Like, I think finding work in the industry initially wasn't the most direct path, or what would be considered at that point of time a normal path to finding work. I think I found my first jobs on Twitter. So at the time there was I don't know if you were on Twitter much back in the early like 2010s, but there was a Follow Fridays thing. So it was like a hashtag thing where you'd be like hashtag FF all of these people, because they either in the film industry or like they shoot cool stuff, or, they're interesting people to follow. So I basically would follow a bunch of people via the filmmaking Follow Fridays thing. I basically ended up meeting my now boss, Matt, via Twitter. I met a bunch of other creatives who then started a group called Melbourne DSLR, which was a thing that happened after a Philip Bloom workshop that he had here with Rode back in probably 2012 now. And that's where I kind of got my first job. I was very fortunate to meet the friends that I have now through that time period that really gave me my start. My first job, my friend Aaron basically got me to shoot this training series for, I think it was dementia training. And basically it was the first thing I'd ever shot, really. First paid job. And it was all of the bells and whistles. I couldn't have asked for a more exciting yet terrifying like foot in the door. It was basically a really significantly large, like significant budget for training films that had a gaffer, best boy, sound person. And at that point, I don't think like Aaron had even seen my showreel. I don't even think I had a showreel at that point. It was basically
just been full of skateboarding stuff as well, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah,
maybe some of the stuff from uni.
Yeah, probably not even. I was still. I think my first job was right at the tail end of the first year of my degree. my film degree. So I don't think I had much to show for it, but I think it was more vibes based and
it's who you know.
Exactly. It's who you know. So I got the taste of what a large film set was like, makeup artist, not having it was a really weird experience not having to move lights and every department having their own thing. I tried to like move a poly just to get a little bit more bounce, and the gaffer was like, "Nah, leave that to me." And I'm like, "All right, cool. I know. I'm learning how this film set works." So that was a really
don't touch my stuff.
In the nicest way, but it was kind of a great learning experience. So, having that under my belt, I ended up not shooting a feature film not shooting a short film at uni because I was like, I've kind of been at the highest level, and in hindsight, maybe it was probably better that I did shoot my own film because I would have probably gained a little bit more, I suppose, lower level experience and also increase my network a little bit more, just because, the best way to build a network is being on other people's film sets and things like that. So
good way to learn. Yeah.
So I don't think I'd do anything different, but that was probably the one thing that I probably would have liked to have done. Like looking back on it now, nearly 15 years later.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a single project that you did.
Yep.
How'd you find the next one?
The next one was it might have happened, very close around the same time. And this is how I met Matt, a former guest of the show.
And your current boss.
And my current boss. I think Matt put out a tweet to shoot a gig at the Evelyn Hotel in Evelyn Hotel in Brunswick. And it was to shoot a live performance. And he basically was like, is anyone free to shoot this gig? There's no money in it, but it'll be fun.
There's exposure.
And he was like, it'll be fun. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do this thing. And so basically shot this this live concert with, I think there was 3 of us running around. And then ever since then, Matt got me on, I can't remember, he got me to assist him on a series. I wasn't shooting anything. I was recording audio. And this is one of the kind of most vivid memories of my freelance career because we were shooting audio for a cricket series out countryside. So I think it was Farmers Union. I was working with another good friend of mine, Sean, who was the DP, and I was boom swinging. I was boom operating. This is back in the days of you had dual system sound. We were shooting on an FS700, and I was on the Zoom H4n with a boom mic and stuff like that, and was capturing dialogue for interviews of these cricket players. So it was regional cricket and how Farmers Union sponsored these events, and it was social media stuff. Not social media stuff, not even social media stuff. It was just content for them, for their YouTube channels in the early days. And I basically recorded all this audio, and there was one sort of, I was recording audio, it was really windy. And we had a dead cat on, or a dead wombat, or just the fur thing. I want to be I want to be somewhat politically correct.
I call them dead cats.
Yeah, I don't know, the dead cat. Yeah, I was recording the audio, and I just thought the headphones were cutting in and out or something like that, but the audio was nearly unusable, to the point where it was just wind cutting in and out between dialogue, and I was like, oh no, I've botched this job.
I'll just run it through the AI.
Oh yeah, this is pre AI. Matt reached out and was like, hey, this audio was not great, and I was just shattered because I think when you're first freelancing, the last job is the one that people know you for. And I was basically really apologetic. I was like, look, don't even take you don't have to pay me for this because I cooked it. I dropped the ball. Now you've had to kind of patchwork it to make it work. So that was that, and I was like, I probably won't I probably won't work with Matt again. This was probably the second out of the series of regional cricket shoots that we were doing. And yeah, so I was just like, look, I'm not gonna work with Matt again. This could be the last of it. So I went back to kind of working. At the time, I was also working in IT. So I was e-learning software development, but it was data entry for the most part through a proprietary kind of e-learning software development system. So I was doing that on the side just to make money in between. And then I think Matt might have got me back. I think right after that was when the C100 dropped. And I think by this point, we did like Matt had got me on a few other jobs. Like my memory's a bit patchy at this point, but that like one audio thing has stuck in my mind.
Traumatizing.
Not traumatizing. It gave me a really great appreciation for sound. And I take sound, like I'm pretty pedantic with my sound now after that experience. So yeah.
You're better for it.
Yeah. A little bit like anxiety, a little bit of anxiety around it, but you know, like I am a better camera operator for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rest of that kind of time period was pretty patchy all the way up until like the C300 got announced, and that was way out of the price range. But then they dropped the C100, and that was basically my kind of first memories of really working with Matt at a much more frequent scale. I probably shot a handful of things on the 7D for Matt, and it was a lot of Specsaver stuff. We were shooting a lot of stuff with Specsavers at the time, and that was a lot of fun. Learned a lot about the human eye and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, once the C100 came around, that's when like the work kind of really started picking up, because you had professional XLRs. You didn't have to run with dual system sound. You could shoot log, at 8-bit at 1080p. And yeah, that was when things really started kind of ramping up freelance wise. And at this point also, I started working as a camera prep technician at Offshoot. Well, Ben's Camera Hire then, but it's now known as Offshoot Rentals. And that's where I got a lot of my kind of technical knowledge from, in terms of like different camera systems and things like that.
Yeah. What was that like?
I think it's a great way to, learn about the latest and greatest, because you get the opportunity to kind of play around with a lot of the technology that you might not get a chance to if you were just freelancing. A fair few ACs come up through like rental houses and stuff like that. And I think it's also great for those who are wanting to become a like DOP to like, if they can't get their foot in the door via kind of like networking.
Traditional ways.
Working in a rental house is a really good way to kind of meet people, as well as...
Because they're coming to you.
they're coming to you. And like, if you're able to like, it's a lot of problem solving. It's a lot of like customer relations stuff. So you pick up a lot of skills working in a rental house. And if someone was coming up in the industry and like couldn't get shooting jobs straight away, rental house is a great way to go about that. Yeah. And learning those skills and getting hands-on with like cinema cameras and cinema lenses and things like that.
Yeah, great. So you're a freelancer. How did you make the transition to full-time DOP, cinematographer, whatever you want to call yourself?
Wow. Okay. That's a funny one, because Matt basically built my career, funnily enough. If it wasn't for Matt was the one that gave me the push to be like, hey, we are hiring you a lot. It's like, I reckon it's a good time for you to like go freelance full time and just kind of get out there and go for it. And I have always been a little bit, I suppose, cautious, especially freelance, because you're your own boss. And, when it rains, it pours, but then there's the drought. And
there's feast and famines.
Yeah. And I don't know, I didn't know how I'd feel about it. So I'd always been working at Offshoot and like freelancing during the week, working on the weekends. So I always had that safety net of, oh, cool, I'm not going to have to worry about, all the bills that I have to pay. Fortunately, I was still living at home at this point. So didn't have rent, didn't have a mortgage. So that really made it easy to go, okay, I'm going to dive in. I'm going to go headfirst into freelancing. I'm going to give my week's notice at Offshoot and be like, hey, I'm going to approach this. Look, if it fails, it fails. And I can always go back to, finding a full-time job and doing that. But let's give it a crack. I'm still young. I don't have any dependents. So like, take the risk and see where it goes.
And it paid off.
It paid off. Yeah, it paid off. And you know, to be fair, I only really worked freelance full time for, I think maybe like 3 or 4 years, maybe even less, because I think it was probably like 2016, 2017 is when I kind of went freelance full time, did that for a bit. And it was a great experience to work freelance full time. There are a lot of learnings that I picked up along the way. Like, I think most people don't really, when you're first coming through uni, you don't understand that freelancing is you're a business and you have to pay taxes and you have to pay your super in Australia. I really got sucked into I can just write it off on tax. You know, I'll buy a camera. It'll be fine. I'll just like, this money's a fugazi. It'll just like, write it off on tax and it'll be fine. So those are some of the mistakes I made as a freelancer. But I learned the most during that time. And basically I think I was up like shooting some larger campaign-y type stuff towards the end of my freelance career. Like, I mean, I still freelance, but like I am now full-time employed. It was the back end of 2019. My partner's brother worked at Carlton United Breweries, and they were needing someone to shoot some higher end like social media like campaign videos. I got the opportunity through my partner's brother to shoot a Pure Blonde like web commercial that was, I think it was for pre-rolls or something like that. And that was like really cool. I'd never shot any product like that before. It was like, all right, let's do this. I'm a little bit nervous, but it will be a fun experience. The shoot went great. There was also learnings because I'd never shot anything like that before, but I got along well with all of the people at CUB at the time. And this was kind of also at the period where they were looking for a more senior video person or videographer to step in and shoot all of their like higher end budgety type stuff, as well as their UGC and other social media content. And then, so they were basically like, do you want to work for us full time? I was at the time, I didn't want to go full time because I loved the flexibility of being freelance. I think, being able to work on your own terms and, if you want to go on holiday, you can go on holiday. You just won't get paid. And, you can like chill out at home during the week, like go to the gym, do whatever you need to do during the week and, earn money when you really want to earn money. But my partner was like, you hate networking with people and you don't really, you're not like a super, super hustler in terms of like networking and then reaching out and doing that whole thing. And I was like, yeah, like I'm not really that type of person. I'm a little bit introverted and like the reaching out and like cold emailing people is not really my vibe. And she was like, yeah, you should just give it a crack. What do you got to lose? You can do it for a couple of years. If you don't like it, go back freelance. And I was like, yeah, cool. All right, I'll give it a crack. Sign the contract. And that end of 2019, November-ish, October, November was when I started full-time at CUB. And how
did that go?
It was good
for the first few months.
Yeah. It was.
I can see where this is going.
It was an interesting experience to begin with because I had never worked a full-time job up until this point, and going from working for yourself to then working in one of the biggest organizations was like a whiplash. It was like going from, I don't need to, if I want to do a thing, I can just go out and do it. If I want to buy a piece of equipment, I can go out and do it. If I want to go on holiday, I just do it. And now I'm going to, if I want to buy a piece of equipment, I have to now pitch it to my bosses to then give them a use case to why we need a bicolor light or a new set of lenses or a external recorder. So that was a interesting experience. Taught me a lot about the corporate dynamic especially within a big organization and how many layers of management you have to go through to get approval on things. Being a beer company as well meant that a lot of the video concepts that we had to or we wanted to create had to go through legal to make sure that they were all legal and okay to then go out and produce and then post online, because it's really strict around alcohol advertising. Went through all of that, and it was just kind of like, wow. I don't think I had my email account for the first 3 weeks, so it was really hard to get a contact with me. So, so I started work, and I got to work on some amazing projects. Like towards the end of 2019, I'd shot a bunch of stuff for like Fat Yak, Pure Blonde. We shot a commercial for Carlton Zero, and then like holidays happen. And we're like, cool, like this is good. I'm settling into this full-time work life. And basically January rolls around, we've got a huge slate of productions on board. We were doing stuff for Pure Blonde for the Australian Open. We shot a piece for that. And then we went out to regional New South Wales to shoot some stuff for Great Northern that was to promote a campaign that they were doing to raise money for the farmers who were struggling due to the drought. There was like Mardi Gras for Fat Yak. They had a big float. And then it kind of like got to March 2020. We went up to like, we had basically got the opportunity to shoot a TVC for Great Northern up in the Northern Territory. And we're like, sick, this is going to be great. We'll go up there, we'll shoot this TVC, like get it, like knock it out of the park. And it was a great experience. We shot this the TVC that I'm proud of, considering I'd never shot anything at that scale before in another state that doesn't have a massive film equipment environment or anything like that. So getting equipment there was a challenge. Like getting a gaffer with equipment there also was a bit of a challenge. So we did a really good job, and like I'm really proud with how the piece came out.
What'd you end up shooting on?
We shot on the Alexa Mini LF, and this was I think a few months after it had come out or something like that. It might have been a few months after Offshoot had received their one, because we hired their one, and it was like humid, and we really kind of like got to test this camera out in like not the most kindest of environments. I had an amazing AC, Ollie. I couldn't have done it without him. He kept the camera going. He kept it safe.
Did it overheat?
No, it didn't overheat.
Wow. That's why you pay so much for it.
Yeah. And we had it like basically bagged, because it was like potential rain was going to come in. And yeah, like we were meant to shoot on one day, and then the key talent was like, no, I'm going to Bali because I need to save a crocodile. And we were like, okay, we need to pivot everything last minute. And we brought everything a day forward, shot the TVC. And then the next day that we were meant to shoot the TVC, torrential rain. So it worked out like beautifully. So that was great. And then basically after we shot the TVC, we kind of delivered it, went through that process. And I think at that point it was towards like the end of March. And we all know what happens at this point of the story, but I think like February was when things were starting to kind of happen. And then March kicked in. Victoria, we went into lockdown March 2020, right? Or was it? Yeah.
March,
so like March 2020, we're all inside. So that was an interesting 1.5 years, 2 years.
Yeah, for Melbourne, it was pretty much 2 years.
Yeah. And throughout that time period, I was fortunate enough to have this full-time job at CUB. It was very difficult to shoot stuff. We had to, the equipment that we had, so CUB had a FS5 Mark II and like a handful of G Master lenses and some very basic lighting kit. So we had to kind of do this thing where we had basically been told to go home, and all the equipment was at the office, and we had to ask for special permission to like get into the office to get all of the equipment that we needed to then attempt to create any semblance of content during this. Who knows how long we're going to be in locked in homes.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. We got yeah. And
No, we're going to extend it now. No, we're extending it again.
Yeah. So 2 years. Yeah.
Get back inside.
Yeah. So it was a bit of an interesting experience, because at that point I'd been with the company for 6 months, and now it's kind of like you're locked inside. you don't really get that culture of hanging out with your colleagues and things like that. And now you have to figure out how to navigate this environment of so what are we going to do to promote or like put on social media, and what does that look like, and how are we going to achieve that from home? And that was like, oh, well, we got to figure it out. And we came up with some really like neat ideas. Well, the creatives came up with some really neat ideas. One of them being a show called Home Game for Carlton Draft. And it was the TLDR for it was a game show with two AFL players that were against each other, hosted by Dave Thornton, the comedian. And it was on Zoom, and it was an interesting challenge to coordinate with AFL players as well as their managers and teams and things like that. Because at that time they were in their football bubbles, because at that point you could do like the AFL players were able to play but without crowds. Like this was a little bit into the pandemic. We figured out like we weren't going out anytime soon.
You're in denial for a few months and then you're like, all right.
Yeah, reality set in. And basically we filmed the show, and I was remote. I learned how to use OBS, and we were like, and this was like before Riverside. This was before and with Zoom, our corporate accounts didn't allow us to record split audio tracks. So everything was baked into a mono track audio situation. That was for the first few episodes, and we were like, no, we need separate audio tracks. So we got like our own kind of like the Home Game Zoom account so that we could do these split audio tracks so that no one was kind of bleeding on top of each other with these game shows. And it was basically like a typical kind of game show where there would be like challenges where it was like, guess whose face this is, but it was like face was blurred, or like who this person is. And we did a handful of episodes like that. So I got to meet a bunch of AFL stars, which was pretty cool. But at the time, I didn't have a webcam for my PC. So it was just like the voice of the show, like, or the voice of the producing. I was like, hey guys, like, you can't see me, but my name's Ben, and I'm recording this locally on my end, so I might chime in every now and again, but I'm just going to be a voice. So apologies that you can't see me, type thing. So that was really fun, and yeah, aside from that, it was just like shooting like UGC related content or like merch stuff, like top downs of merch products for like Corona and VB and things like that. So you just get packages delivered to your door, or like the brand managers would be like, hey, we need like some photos of these hats or these mugs or like these glasses or whatever. And what's your address? We need to send you. So there was a lot of packages like rolling through the door, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. This is my address, and okay, cool. I need to shoot like a beer shot or something like that. I shot a still that was composited into a billboard that appeared, I think, on a Queensland freeway, like a 50-foot like billboard in our bedroom. And it was like, I didn't realize at the time where it was going. And I shot the still, and I was like, oh, hey, it's probably going for like a social media post. It was for Green Beacon. And I was like, oh, maybe it's going for their like Facebook page or something like that. And then the creative came back, was like, no, this is going on a 50-foot billboard, like a really large billboard on the freeway in Queensland, like where the brewery is. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to have to reshoot this thing, and I'm going to have to really like level it up. So yeah, like at that time, I think like Offshoot was doing like organizing couriers from Offshoot, and got like a 5DSR in and shot this like 50 megapixel like still that completely composited into the final piece. So yeah, we had to make things work, whether it was bedrooms or, you know, if it was just me doing a thing, my hands like holding a beer, like me drinking a beer, doing a thing, like photos. Yeah, it was a wild time to be a director of photography or like working in content creation during that period, as you probably know yourself.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of work for me. I didn't do much during that time. Went into hibernation a little bit. My wife was an essential worker, so she helped bring in the money to keep us alive. But yeah, we got through it. Yeah. And as you got through it, how long did you stay with Carlton United Breweries before you moved on?
Yeah. So, like, I suppose to double back to those who were working freelance in our industry at that time, like I really like felt for all of my colleagues and friends and like yourself had to basically go into hibernation, couldn't work, like all of the work permit stuff was really like gray area. No one really knew what was going on. And, I was like very fortunate and very blessed to have that full-time work. To answer your question of how long I was at CUB post kind of pandemic, it was basically, I think, maybe a year and a half. Rode out the kind of tail end of the pandemic so we could go back to the office. And at this point also, there was an acquisition happening. So Asahi ended up acquiring CUB. So there was like some more like structural changes and stuff like that. And at this point, I was a little bit burnt out. I was a little bit burnt out by the corporate kind of structure of things, like lots of meetings, and I wasn't really fulfilled with the work that I was producing at that point. Like I got the opportunity to work on like some amazing projects during my time there, and I'm forever grateful to have had that job, especially during that time period. But I was kind of ready for a change. And, at this point, Matt had basically was looking for somebody to come on, like a director of photography to come on the books full time. And I basically, like, we'd caught up for like beers, like on and off throughout that kind of like when we could actually go out and go to the pub. And yeah, he kind of like had kind of spoken about the fact that he might need someone to come on full time. And I get a call February, I think 2022. My dates are a bit hazy at this point. And he was basically like, I need someone to come on full time. Are you keen? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's just jump in and like
make it happen.
Because, at this point I hadn't worked with Matt in, nearly 2.5 years. So it was kind of like, it'd be great to like get the band back together, so to speak, and work with some like old friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. And, that's that. And that kind of takes us to the present.
Yeah. So Ben, tell me, what are you doing today?
So today I am the director of photography at Balloon Tree Productions, and I have been working there for 3 years now, a little over 3 years now. And like it's been a whirlwind 3 years. We've gotten the opportunity to work on some like amazing projects, and we've really like got a close-knit team. Like I couldn't have asked for a better group of collaborators to work with on a daily basis at Balloon Tree. I like got the most supportive boss in that I've had, and I really kind of treasure the work environment that we've now got. It's a small team, but we make stuff happen.
Yeah, great. Well, talk me through what's a typical project that you'll find yourself doing at Balloon Tree Productions.
So I think in the last 6 months, my role has kind of morphed and changed a little bit. Predominantly, I'm on the tools, on location, working with clients, filming internal like training films or communication stuff. So a lot of like piece the cameras, overlay, handheld training films, like really kind of that sort of internal communication type of content. And then in and around that, it's kind of like I've now started helping our editor Rob with the assemblies or sorting through rushes and things like that, because me being the one that shot it,
it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Do you like it though?
Look, for a long time, I really disliked the process of watching my own footage.
Really? It's the best way to learn.
It is the best way to learn, and I've learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
But I started off like I think with my career like editing first, like so I was a shooter editor, and there was always more editing work, so you'd always end up doing a lot of editing, and I was never really a strong editor. And then because I was watching my own work, so I was like, I really don't like this. So I was always picking the flaws out. So it really never made it a good process for me to go through a project and be like, oh, I've cut this thing and I've found all the little flaws along the way.
Would you call yourself a perfectionist?
For a long time, yeah.
But have you learned how to not be?
Yeah, I was quite the perfectionist, and I would probably say to near detriment to the creative process and things like that. But now I've really learnt to learnt to be at peace with what I've shot, because, at the end of the day, I think as long as the client's happy, that's all that you need. And like, as long as you're able to make your client feel supported and give them a really good product at the end that they're happy with, that one highlight in the background doesn't really, matter so much,
That blown out window, you can't see the detail.
Yeah. I think also like kind of with age, I've learnt to really prioritize what is important, especially like with being on set and you're at a time crunch. The client may not have more budget to pay for overtime. You've been like rostered on for like a half day or something like that, and it's really approaching that 4 to 5 hour mark, and you're like, we've still got like a ton of content to shoot. Like, how are we going to get through this? So things start like, you got to kind of just let things go so that you can actually capture what you need to capture to get the job done on time, on budget, and make the client happy all at the same time. So yeah, I've learned to like be at peace with my perfectionism, doing the rushes and basic edits and stuff like that. And I've been managing the video podcast side of things. So at Balloon Tree, we have a video podcast studio. So I've been hosting those, podcast producing those, as well as doing the edits of those as well. Well, actually the cleanups and then the social media cut downs, because we use a little bit of tech to make the editing process a little bit more seamless, because, they'll like clients tend to batch record and you'll have like, 4 or 5 hours worth of footage potentially over 3 cameras with audio and stuff like that. So whatever can help with the process, we tend to use those technologies to help us kind of get that happening.
Any tips?
One of the pieces of tech that we use is called Autopod.
Yeah,
we use Autopod. It's amazing in the capabilities and how quickly you can cut things. So it's great for a first pass, but I would never use it for a one and done solution, because it does some weird things, or like, it might cut to a wide shot and you're like, that's not really the greatest place. So there's always a second and third pass that needs to be done after using Autopod. It is pretty tedious as well to get set up. I don't know, have you used it?
No, I looked into it. I was like, that's a great idea for my podcast, but I don't use any of that stuff. I just do it all manually, because there's bits that I want to cut out and tighten up and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
so we would run it through Autopod. There's it takes a bit of time to set up, especially if you're recording with multiple audio channels. Quick cuts it real quick, but then you have to still go back and listen for background noise, listen for when talent are trying to get to a point, cutting out the, oh, can I do this again moments and things like that. So there is still a lot of manual process for it, but with the tight turnarounds and things like that, having, Autopod cut do the draft cut of the episode really saves us a ton of time. And outside of that, it's a lot of planning.
So do you do a lot of planning? Is that a part of your job, or is there another team member that does all the creative and then they go, here you go, Ben, here's the brief?
We work as a collective. So generally it's Matt and Chase that will take a client's idea and, bring the creative, especially if the client doesn't have a specific creative that they want to, they're just we want a training film. So, Matt and Chase will basically come up with the creative to then build out this suite of assets that we need to create.
And it's a Back to the Future theme.
Yeah. So we get to shoot fun things like that. Creating parody content is a really big part of Balloon Tree. We've done, I haven't shot them, but I have been a part of them. We've done a bunch of Back to the Future parodies for Specsavers and things like that. So I basically come in when it comes to like scheduling and planning the shoot, equipment, timings, location recce's, all of the stuff that like a DOP would actually have to go on if they were to shoot a higher budget thing. Like this is more for like larger kind of campaigny work, a lot of shot listing, meetings with clients, speaking to other collaborators such as like ACs, gaffers, things like that. Doing previs stuff. I'm a big fan of previs.
What's previs for people that are new to the game?
So previs is pre-visualization. And there's there's a handful of ways that you can do previs. You can do photo boards, like taking a directive viewfinder app like CAD Rage or Artemis or or even just your phone, and taking stills of people in locations where you might be shooting and basically photo boarding it so that you can then use it to either create animatics that you can time to voiceover or things like that. Or you could go the more like digital route like I like to do. There's a couple of programs that I like to use. One of them is called CineTracer, and that is a game on Steam that allows you to basically build sets and use like equivalent film lighting to then light scenes. The photometrics aren't really 100% there, like they're ballpark, but it gives you a really good idea of like, I need a 1200D over through an 8x8 or something like that to create this soft light. But the other software that I've actually come around to using more it's called Set a Light 3D, and it is an app that's basically started off, I think it's mainly targeted at photographers to do photography lighting. So there's like a lot of like flash strobe like modifiers and like big poly and stuff like that. But there is a video film aspect. So there's all of your typical film light fixtures. They've got a handful of aperture lights. They've got RE, MA, like the RE kind of big HMI lights, so that you can kind of play around with them in a virtual environment. And like I'm still not sure how accurate the lighting is, but again, it's like ballpark, gives you an idea. It's like it definitely saves you time and money, especially if you've never worked with a 1200D, for instance, or an RE M80 or M90, or any of those like kind of bigger light fixtures that really require gaffers and things like that to kind of get access to. Saves you a bit of money if you want to learn how to light a face or something like that. Costs a little bit, but like, you can use it until the end of time if you want to kind of experiment with lighting looks and things like that without any impact on other people or like spending tons of money on equipment.
Yeah, it sounds like a helpful tool.
Yeah. I kind of I'd swear by it if you're especially if you're coming up and wanting to learn how to light. I think it's a great piece of software to kind of learn stuff.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And looking to the future, what do you see for yourself and your video production journey?
I see myself working at Balloon Tree for the long term. I think I'm at the age of my life where it's kind of like I'm ready to like help build a business, especially with friends. And, I would love to be shooting more TVCs and things like that. And, also kind of pursuing my own projects. I think, the team that we have at Balloon Tree is like fantastic. I love working with everyone there. So yeah, I like for at least the
foreseeable future.
Foreseeable future. I'm happy with where I'm at. And, Matt has given me a lot of like freedom to kind of like work on my own like creative projects and stuff like that. And like I've been in a lot of Matt's like YouTube videos, and like I've also used that as content for my like kind of like YouTube venture. So yeah, like that's also another thing, just creating content to post up on YouTube and things like that. I think is I'd like to do that into the future, but who knows? Like if we get really busy, it might be really hard to keep up with the rate of how I'd like to post. But
yeah. Oh, tell me about your YouTube channel.
So I've got a very small YouTube channel. just my name, and it's just me trying to share my experiences as I don't want to say veteran, but like someone who's been slightly seasoned, a director of photography. Like I've made so many mistakes along the journey, and if I can share anything with someone that will help them not make the mistakes that I've made, then that'd be a huge win for me. I just want to be able to share stuff, but it's also one of those things that if no one sees the content, then is anyone getting stuff out of it? But yeah, I have a fun time making the videos, so I think that is all that
step one.
Yeah, that's step one, and it's really hard being on camera. So I think that is also given me a lot of empathy for those that I have to film.
Do you have any tips to make people feel comfortable in front of the camera?
I think the biggest tip I can think to make people feel comfortable in front of the camera or look comfortable in front of the camera, I think is probably the better way of things is like building a bit of candor at the start, like just having building a relationship before you hit roll, and really taking the person through the process and being like, okay, we're going to roll this teleprompter. If you need to change the speed or if you need line breaks anywhere, let us know. We can kind of workshop this so that you're comfortable in presenting. Giving feedback to talent who haven't been on camera before, especially that are nervous, just giving them that encouragement to be like, you're doing great. Like, it's hard. Like, I've been on camera before and it is really hard, and you're doing a great job, especially considering this is the first time, or it might be your second time on camera or something like that, with all of the lights and the sound stuff and all of the crew and things like that. So I think really trying to empathize with talent and coaching them through the process is, I think, a good step in making them feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's a very good tip. And to finish off today's episode, Ben, do you have any words of wisdom for our audience today?
I think my words of wisdom would have to be, it's okay to fail, especially if you're on the director of photography kind of stream of things. You want everything to be perfect, and you want the frame to look like a Roger Deakins like frame, but you get there by failing. And that was something that took me a long time to learn, because I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to have the best best Rembrandt lighting and perfect hair light, make everything look really natural, not saucy. But with all of those failures along the way, I've really stripped back the way that I shoot, and now it looks more natural, or things like that. So failure is not a bad thing. But also, I think if you fail on a paid job, take responsibility. I think owning up to it and being honest with client, especially if you can't save what's happened, is better than trying to escape it.
Yeah, and no one wants to hear excuses.
Yeah. I think, own up to it. And I suppose, outside of the failure part of things, or learning to be comfortable with failure, is to try everything. I think the most experience I got was learning how to record audio and failing at it, as we heard, as I mentioned earlier on. Learning, how to edit. Now I'm relearning how to edit, but learning how to edit because it will make me better as a DOP, because I know how to get better coverage or more concise coverage for a scene. Learning how to be on camera to help build that empathy with those talent that you will inevitably end up working with. So I think those are kind of my words of wisdom.
Great. Oh, Ben, thank you for joining us today on the Your Story Studios podcast.
Thank you for having me.